Today, we are diving deep into a blueprint that is, well, pretty mind-blowing. We're talking about an organization called XONJ, and their plan is to mash up veterans, government surplus, AI, and even blockchain to create a totally new kind of social enterprise. Yeah, it's ambitious, it's incredibly complex, and we're going to deconstruct it piece by piece. So, this is really the big question at the heart of it all, isn't it? How on earth do you take these completely different worlds, veterans, old school federal programs, cutting edge AI, and blockchain, and weave them all together into something that actually works? It sounds like a puzzle with pieces that shouldn't fit, but that's exactly what we're here to figure out. All right, here's our roadmap for making sense of this. We're going to start with the big vision, the why, then we'll get into the nitty gritty of what they actually plan to do. After that, we'll look at the federal engine that powers it all, their super interesting corporate structure, and finally, we'll get to their really futuristic franchise model. Okay, let's jump right into section 1, a vision for impact. To really get what they're doing, we have to start with the mission. What is the ultimate goal of this massive, complex plan? And here it is, straight from the source. Now, a few words here really pop out. Replicate, sustainable, and veteran-led. This tells you right away they're not just trying to build one thing. They're trying to create a model, a blueprint that could, in theory, be copied and pasted all across the country. So what's the actual strategy? Well, at its core, it's a framework for public assistance, and it's led by veterans. But here's the clever part. They're not trying to reinvent the wheel. They're plugging into existing government resources, things like surplus property from the GSA and programs from the Small Business Administration. Then they bolt on some really modern tech, like AI and sustainable farming. Okay, moving on to section 2. The big vision is great, but what does it all look like on the ground? You know, for actual people in actual communities. What are they doing? Let's talk scale, because they are aiming high. First up, healthcare. They're projecting a target of 15,000 patient visits a year, and they're going to do this with mobile clinics that can reach people in rural and underserved areas. And it's not just healthcare. They're also taking on food insecurity. The goal here is to serve 10,000 people every single year through their sustainable agriculture programs. And they're even looking at the water. The plan includes supporting over 2,000 coastal households using things like floating clinics and other maritime services. I mean, this slide really just lays out the sheer ambition. It is so comprehensive. We're talking everything from mobile labs focused on trauma recovery to using augmented reality for job training, all the way to veteran housing co-ops and these high-tech farms that mix solar panels with agriculture. They are really trying to tackle a lot of interconnected problems all at once. So the obvious question is, how in the world do you fund something this massive? And that brings us right to section 3, the federal engine. The secret sauce to this whole plan is how they intend to partner up with the federal government. A huge piece of the puzzle is this federal program for surplus property. Basically, it allows nonprofits to get their hands on all kinds of stuff the government doesn't need anymore. We're talking vehicles, heavy equipment, land, even ships and planes, all of it repurposed for public benefit. And look, we're not talking about old office chairs here. They have very specific high-value targets. They're looking for aircraft to create mobile medevac services, vessels to become floating clinics, land for those high-tech farms, and heavy equipment for building things and responding to disasters. Now, as you can probably imagine, getting your hands on a surplus aircraft isn't exactly a walk in the park. This slide kind of breaks down the official 6-step process, and it is a bureaucratic marathon. You have to prove you're eligible, navigate the GSA's online systems, and file a mountain of paperwork. But it is absolutely crucial to their entire model. Okay, so on to section 4. To navigate all that bureaucracy and manage these enormous projects, you need a really specific, really smart corporate structure. So let's take a look at the who behind the how. So to get their setup, you first have to understand this one key program from the Small Business Administration. Think of it like a Big Brother program for businesses. It lets bigger, more experienced companies, the mentors, help smaller companies, the protégés, so they can team up and win government contracts they could never land on their own. And here is how XONJX is using that very program. It's actually really clever. They've built a joint venture where the main company, a service-disabled veteran-owned small business, is the protégé. It's then mentored by 2 other specialized companies, one that's women-owned and another in a special hub zone. It's a strategic alliance, and it's designed to give them the best possible shot at winning those federal contracts. All right, that brings us to our final section. And honestly, this might be the most radical part of the entire plan, the franchise of the future. This is where they go beyond just using existing government programs and start creating a totally new financial world. At the heart of it all is this idea called the 40 Club Elite. So forget what you know about traditional franchises. This is more like a powerful co-op. The idea is to create these clusters of 40 franchise partners who all pool their money and resources to fund and operate these big projects together. And, of course, there is a pretty serious financial incentive built in. The projected monthly earnings for each one of those franchise partners is a whopping $50,000. That's all driven by them participating together in these cooperative contracts. Now, this is where it gets really wild. To manage the ownership and the voting rights inside these franchise clusters, they're using a blockchain system. It's called Tink Gold Share. Basically, they're using NFT tokens to represent a franchisee's actual ownership stake, their right to vote on decisions, and their slice of the profits. So how does this actually work? Well, each partner gets a set number of tokens. Every transaction is logged on a secure blockchain, so it's all completely transparent. Then, the token holders get to vote on big decisions through what's called a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization. It's basically a digital co-op run by its members. It's this incredible fusion of old-school cooperative ideas with bleeding-edge technology. And just to ground this in reality, here's a sample budget for one of their big agrovoltaic projects. You can see exactly where that $15 million from the franchise investments would go. The biggest chunks are for construction, the solar panels, and the farming infrastructure. This shows how those digital tokens actually translate into real-world steel and soil. And that brings us right back to the big question we started with. We've seen the vision, the services, the federal engine that powers it, and the frankly revolutionary corporate and financial models. It's an absolutely massive, incredibly complex machine. So is this the future of social enterprise? Is this a viable blueprint that can actually be copied across the country? That right there is the multi-billion-dollar question that XONJX is trying to answer.